Welcome to the MS-Perspektive podcast, Perspective with a K as I'm German. I'm Nele von Horsten, MS patient, patient advocate and author. I'm bringing you interviews, inspiration and information about living with multiple sclerosis and show you ways how you can positively influence the disease and make the best out of your diagnosis. On ms-perspektive.com you will find the show notes, 11 free tips as a PDF and lots of other information. And now the show begins. Thanks for tuning in again and welcome to episode number 79, How Your Gut Microbiome Could Influence Multiple Sclerosis with Professor Dr. Natalia Szejko. Professor Dr. Natalia Szejko is a clinical and research fellow at the University of Calgary in Canada and normally works at the Warsaw Medical University, for short WUM, in Poland. And now the interview begins. Hello, Natalia. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me in the interview today.
Hi, thank you so much, Nele, for having me. It's a pleasure too.
Yeah. Yes. And you are actually right now in Calgary in Canada, right? So what are the temperatures?
Oh, well, yes, yesterday was horrible. It was like 10 degrees. But
Okay.
today I think it's supposed to increase.
Okay. I mean, the interview will go online a bit later, but right now here in Greater Dresden area, it's 32 degrees Celsius. So that's a bit hot as well.
Oh, wow.
But Natalia, before we actually start with the interview, it would be lovely if you could introduce yourself to the audience so they know who is my guest today on the show.
Yeah, so my name is Natalia and I'm a neurologist, trained neurologist, and I've done my studies and later my specialty in adult neurology in Poland. And also I did my PhD there. And during my training, I had an opportunity to work with patients with MS and related disorders. And it was like a year-long experience with a great team of researchers and clinicians who really taught me a lot about this disease. And it was very inspiring. And now I'm completing like a clinical and research fellowship in Calgary in Canada. And yes, so also I'm a member of European Charcot Foundation, where we have like a junior membership where we are fellows, and I'm trying to be very active there. I'm a member of the steering committee, and also a member in TSF, which is like a Samara Foundation. Related to NMOSD and an ambassador for Poland. And yeah, well, in terms of like my research and clinical interests, they are related to, for example, treatment of MS with alternative and complementary medicine, but also, one of them is gut microbiome. And now also failed clinical trials in MS and related disorders. And so I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you. And I had actually once for the German podcast Dr. Pröbstl as an interview guest, but not so far for the English one. It was not yet the topic, so I'm really happy that you are my guest today on the show. And just one other question, what was your personal motivation for your career choice? Probably the lovely MS patients, right?
Yes, this too. And I think that this field gives a lot of opportunities to help the patients. You know, it's very inspiring because also, as you know, it's developing very quickly. I think it's one of the most developing fields in neurology nowadays. And yes, it's true that the stories of these patients are also very inspiring. And I had also great mentors and clinicians. So I think it's extremely important to have people who inspire you, which are mainly, I agree, are the patients. And I think for the clinician, the most important is that, have like a good relationship with your patient. And that's the motivation.
Okay, great. Yes. And that is something which is very great for us, that so much is happening in the field of MS. So that gives us as patients lots of hope. Also the ones that are facing a severe kind of MS. So before we dive deeper into the gut microbiome topic, what is currently known about the role of the gut microbiome in the pathogenesis of multiple sclerosis and related disorders?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's a very complex topic. And last year, with my colleagues from Poland and Austria, we wrote an article about it, trying to tackle the most important topics. So it's been discussed for years, and as you heard, probably also not only in MS, generally in different neurological disorders, because now it sort of became like a hot topic, this gut-brain axis, which is true, it exists. So we know that basically there is a very strong interaction between gut microbiome that can impact the brain health on different levels. So, this is like and it was like an inspiration for overall like investigation of this topic. So there are so many different levels, like I said. One level, it's been discovered, of course, in some animal models. As you know, there is the most investigated animal model, which is experimental autoimmune encephalomyelitis. And it's been already like demonstrated on animal models that there is this interaction in MS. And later this was like transposed to research in humans. And we know that basically, there is like a two-way interaction. So basically that the patients with MS, they have specific changes in gut microbiome. And this could be related both to this sort of brain-gut axis, changes in this gut-brain axis, but also now it's postulated that it could be that, some changes in the gut, they can also influence the immune system. And as you know, immune system is like a very crucial in MS. So this is on another level that probably both the brain itself is influenced, but also the immune system. And like coming back to sort of or circulating to what we can do in humans and the clinical work is that eventually also some clinical, applications and treatment applications were related to gut microbiome. As you heard, probably, for example, the use of different diets, right? Because we know that diets, they have very strong impact on gut microbiome, and whether this sort of indirectly can impact the gut and then help people with MS in their symptoms. And on the other hand, also use of probiotics, right? Which is also like a long-hanging fruit, like a target that we could use to, for example, modify the disease, right? Or even treat symptoms. And finally, this is again like a hot topic overall, I would say, not only in MS, but in other disorders also. So like a fecal transplantation. So we can transplant, right, from healthy individuals, the gut microbiome. So all these different levels from pathophysiology and, pathophysiology, like I said, on different levels. So both, I would say, to very briefly summarize, so the impact on the brain, the impact on the immune system, and then sort of whether this have also impact on progression of disease, and finally application in clinical trials. Yeah, but like I said, it's like a very short summary, but we will discuss some details now.
Yes, absolutely. So you already mentioned that there is a lot of interaction, but do we know as of today if the changes in the gut microbiome occur before the onset of MS or NMOSD, other related disorders, or do they develop as a result of the disease? Is that question already cleared?
No, it's not cleared, but I think it's much easier currently, much easier to do a study in which we just compare sort of patients with MS, their gut microbiome with just healthy controls. So basically, this kind of studies, it's like where it's been done, and it's like, again, like low hanging fruit, and basically it demonstrated that variety of different taxa of bacteria are different, so are more prevalent or less prevalent in MS. And one of them is for example, related to short chain fatty acids, this kind of bacteria that sort of process this kind of substances. And this is like easier to do, and we have variety of these studies. But there are very few studies that investigated so far whether this could be like a trigger for development of MS, so that people who are healthy, for example, they have like different diet or some predisposition that can eventually lead to development of MS because of the changes in gut microbiome. So this, I would say, is still ongoing investigation. And we don't know so far. But I presume that, it could be one of the factors, but it's just, it has to be confirmed. Yes.
Yeah. And how much can the gut microbiome be influenced by a healthy diet and overall lifestyle? And what impact could this have on the severity or progression of MS? So let's say I was eating not healthy. Now I received the diagnosis and I changed to a very, very healthy diet.
Yes. So exactly. We know that, every person, probably you also heard about it, that every person has like individual microbiome. So it's like a very personalized sort of intervention also, which is probably you also heard about personalized medicine. So it's great for this, target too. So this is nice, but also it's complicating things because every person is different. But basically the reason why it's different is first genetics. We know that genetic predisposition has an impact on gut microbiome, but then second, as a second thing, of course, as you said, environmental factors. And this environmental factors, of course, one of them, like main ones, we know that it's the diet. So, for example, if you eat a lot of fatty things, the bacteria that love these fatty things, they will develop. And on the contrary, the ones who are more develop better in like, vegetable-based diet, they won't. So it's very like logical. So of course, this has like a huge impact. And what I can definitely say, and this is another hot topic in MS now, and I think it's like a very promising and interesting and again like a very easy target. So the diet. So many trials have been tried, and for different diets, ketogenic diet, not fasting diet, very different intervention. But what we know exactly, and I was in the Congress of American Academy of Neurology this year, and there was a great talk, like a hot topic again about this. So basically, the only diet that we know that has like a positive impact overall on the disease, on MS, is the Mediterranean diet, what we call Mediterranean diets, right? So, basically plant-based with, a lot of fish and like a reduction of processed food. So this definitely overall has a good impact on MS. But also has an impact on gut microbiome. And this, I would say, this would be the only sure recommendation that I have for our patients now, which you probably already knew, but I'm just confirming the fact. And this is from the trials, what we know, and the one that we would strongly recommend. So not really otherwise, because like I said, there were trials with, for example, also gluten-free diet. For now, we don't know whether like there is no data to give us, confirmation that it's working. But the Mediterranean one, yes, please follow this one.
Yes, and of course, I don't know if I mentioned it already so often on the English one, on the German one for sure, very often, and especially that it's important to eat lots of vegetables and try to do your food yourself and not buy the all processed stuff. So, how realistic is it to use the gut microbiome as a therapeutic target in MS?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think it is realistic because, it's like I said, we have a lot of potential interventions that are not as invasive, and as others. For example, this could be the diet. Again, this could be a probiotic that the patient takes. Fecal transplantation, of course, it's a little bit more invasive, but still, it's not like, I don't know, like a transplantation of hematopoietic cells, right? So less, obviously, invasive. And now, like I said, we are moving towards the personalized treatment. So I think, again, this could be like a very nice sort of niche where we can combine this. But the problem is that it's very complex. So that's the problem, and that we do not really influence like one taxa. We influence the whole microbiome. So that's the problem, I think, at the moment. So again, coming back, but because probably this is what interests patients. So again, the only diet that is working is this Mediterranean, so far, at least from the data. And it's not only because of gut microbiome. Generally, we know that it's healthy, and probably, it impacts the immune system too. So what we call also low-grade inflammation, it's stopped, and definitely this helps in MS and overall. So on different levels. Probiotics. So far, unfortunately, we don't have very strong data that support that, like the use of probiotics. And well, again, this is indirectly, we're thinking that, okay, maybe this has impact on gut microbiome, and this was why this will help in people with MS. So far, we don't have very strong data to support this. And fecal transplantation, like so far it's limited to very small trials. So the data, again, like the evidence of the data is not very strong. So, it's an investigating debate. I think definitely the diet and the probiotics is the intervention, and that is realistic, right? The problem is that, like I said, from my perspective, and when I was reading the trials, is that, and overall pathophysiologically, is that it's very complex. So we have to, if we discover, like so far we know, like is like what is the change of the composition of gut microbiome in people with MS. But if we discover sort of maybe like how to simplify it, then it would be easier. But this is the only this is the problem that we have right now. So I think it's realistic because the intervention could be easy, but we have to simplify it because, like I said, it's a huge amount of, millions, trillions of different bacteria that we have impact on. And this, again, apart from this, there is an impact on immune system and very complex interaction between central nervous system and even peripheral, because now there are very nice studies showing that also gut microbiome has impact on the small neurons that are, like, for example, located in our gut. So even there, like there is like more production of serotonin and all of this, it's like, so if we find like one specific target and like one pathway, I think we should start from there, because otherwise, you're impacting like everything and we are not sure what is working, and that's why maybe we are failing so far. But I'm very hopeful because of the easiness, like because it's an easy intervention.
Okay, yes, and you don't want to fix one thing and crash another one because of the complexity. Yeah, I totally understand. And would that be a one-time intervention, or would it require ongoing treatment? I mean, with the fecal transplantation and with the probiotics?
Mhm. Yeah, so more logically, I think it would require more like long-term therapy, especially with like probiotics. Obviously, we know that it's not enough to take only once probiotics, and then you will have to carry on, right? Because it's just an intervention that has to be repeated. And then in terms of fecal transplantation, yes, so potentially this is the intervention that could be done once. But like I said, so far it's like very small trials. So, and well, yes, for example, in animal models, yes, it's been found to it's been found to work, and of course, there the trial, like the samples were bigger. Um, but in humans, like I said, so far we are failing, but also the numbers were very small. And as you know, for the studies, the numbers are important to demonstrate the statistical significance. So, so I think that depending on what intervention you need, then you will pick how long it will last. So, probiotics, long term. Fecal transplantation, I would say that only once. Yes.
Okay, thank you. And could the composition of the gut microbiome help determine the subtype of MS in a patient and help make individualized treatment decisions? Because we are talking more and more about these subtypes, about phenotyping MS.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, like I said, we majority of studies, unfortunately, they're done already in patients who developed MS. So, and of course, again, it's a complex disease. So it's not like that patient who has like you're right, completely right, that now we're trying to deep phenotype, right? So not only the classical division that we have, like relapsing, remitting, and then, like primary progressive, secondary progressive. This is like a classical, but now we try even to phenotype it, even like more deeper based on other features, even genetic ones, right? So majority of studies, they were done on people who already have MS, and sort of they were classified by one of the majority are like this classical subtypes. Of course, one does not exclude the others. So when patient who has a relapsing remitting MS can develop later secondary progressive MS, right? So, but yeah, this is like sort of the investigation that this has to be done. Uh, so far we are really lacking this like a prolonged sort of prospective studies in which we try to, we measure a gut microbiome at point 1, for example, and then see how the disease progresses over time, and this has impact on MS. So this one is so far, not. There are I think, only 2 studies that did this, and they demonstrated, yes, some changes and like some specific biomarkers for subtypes, but again, I think it's too small to drive the conclusions. So again, this is like if somebody is listening to us, the investigators, something that I think it's crucial, because it could be a nice biomarker, and for a patient or the clinician to tell us, okay, I know how the disease maybe will progress. And this, again, it's like a very easy, material, even easier to take, obviously, than blood. Yeah, I think it would be great. But so far, I think only on 2 studies, it's not easy to conclude. Yeah.
Okay, but there is potential for
Yes.
predicting severity and course of the MS. Okay, that's that's interesting. And of course, I mean, the field or that direction, I think, is just starting to grow, and maybe at one point might be exploding. We'll see.
Yes,
But it's a very interesting direction. So, what are the next steps needed in research to better understand the connection between the gut microbiome and MS?
So I think that's several steps. First of all, like I said, more targeted interventions. So not maybe just blowing on the whole, but thinking about we know what taxa are more represented and less represented in MS. So maybe thinking on only one, and specifically thinking how to target this one, and this could facilitate us to understand why it's not working or why it's working, right? And then the second one that we already just discussed. So I think that we are really lacking the trials and investigations that would sort of be prospective, right? Long-term investigations. So both in have healthy individuals, taking a look into, just comparison, those who will develop MS and those who won't, and basically seeing whether the initial gut microbiome changes in this will have impact on developing MS, right? Or NMOSD or MOGAD. And finally, yes, also on the other hand, very similar, but in patients with MS, again, long-term investigations, which will enable us basically looking more on the progression of disease, because again, we are searching for these disease modifiers, and this is a very nice disease modifier, because we don't, obviously, like you said, we don't want to change one problem from another, but if we use something very easy like a probiotic that is impacting only one bacteria, then maybe it would be possible to, for example, prevent, for a patient who has relapsing remitting MS, prevent development to secondary progressive MS, right? Which is, as we know, overall it's harder to treat. So I think it would be great. And finally, I think the next steps are also so big, as you know. Like I said, sample sizes are crucial, right? So overall, I think it would be great if we can combine our forces, and like a creation of international consortia from different countries, which, for example, European Charcot Foundation, it's I think a very nice initiative, because we are all juniors, but really we have, I'm doing a little bit of advertisement, but I think we really joined forces, and it's very nice. Obviously, we still don't have as much opportunities from the funding perspective, but we are trying to get one. So this international collaboration that is possible through all this initiative, like grants and all these organizations, also ACTRIMS and European Charcot Foundation, and etc. This can help to create this, and this is very important because we can increase the number of patients that could be enrolled. And second, we can include diverse populations, because again, we know that, like I said, this is, I think, the main problem with gut microbiome, that it's so complex, so individualized, that, your genetic background, ethnical background, racial background, this has also impact. So obviously, if we investigate, I don't know, enroll only people from Poland, say, obviously we have also specific diet. This is one thing. We are in specific geographical location, the second thing. And the third thing is that we have a specific genetic background. And if we compare this with people from Japan, it would be different, because obviously, again, different diet and geographical location, all this has impact. So we cannot generalize things that we found in one population to another. So I think it would be great to compare this different, the US, unfortunately, which we know that has, not majority of people, unfortunately, they still use this processed diet, right? So I think it would be like a very nice, for example, study to take a comparison of different geographical locations also. And obviously, again, I'm presuming that due to complexity and due to all the impact of all these factors on gut microbiome, we will find changes. But, it's important to confirm, because then again, as a result, the clinician will think, okay, I'm here, located in Japan. So I know that, I could use this specific probiotic because my patients, they need something different than people from Poland, right? So I think we presume this. This is just a presumption, but it would be nice to compare. So I'm really into like international collaboration. And one more thing, I'm very into involving of patients into research. So it would be great, and I think that in every research initiative, it's great to ask the patients. For example, we tried the diet, we tried the probiotics. So and prebiotics and probiotics. This is another discussion, but anyway. So we should ask the patient what is the intervention that they think is, for example, tolerable, right? And that it's adequate in their opinion too. So I think it's another thing that's now is growing, and I'm very glad to see that also from the ethical perspective, that patients with MS, they have a voice in our research, and that for years, as they remained silent, mainly because unfortunately also they didn't have the opportunity to voice, to give their voice. So all these different things, I think that are like a future sort of steps for all of us to think about. But like I said, I'm very hopeful. And like you said, it's developing very quickly. So I think that, we're still at the beginning of this.
Yes, absolutely. And I would have agreed in between, but yeah, you see my baby here. The listeners don't see it, but I have to be on silent mode a bit more often these days. Yes, and I just thought about Lisa Angerde's group, for example, the cohort of the MS twins, where there is always the possibility that the twin that has not yet MS or related disorders might become MS, and there you can look at gut microbiome, at MRI, at all these different things. And it's very interesting. Of course, you don't have big numbers because it's monozygotic twins. But it might be interesting to get a first direction, right? And hopefully, I don't know I have to say, but I hope that there are some other twin cohorts around the world, which could help with numbers and with some studies.
Yes, I think so. That, and generally, we also, in addition to this, we have obviously a lot of now there, due to democratization of research. So the idea is that we create like an open resource for different researchers. I mean, open. Of course, it's anonymized, and you have to like fulfill some criteria to have access to the data. But probably you heard about UK Biobank, or in the States we have like All of Us cohort. So different cohorts in which obviously they are specific, like All of Us, for example. It's for every ages, so it's great for MS because you have young people, so there potentially you have like this. All people are healthy, but they are investigated longitudinally. So it's possible to take a look at and compare those who. So it's like a cross-sectional study between healthy and people who will develop MS. or for example, the UK Biobank. This one is in people who are older, so they're like above 50, but still we have like access to the diagnosis that they have. So like all this, the different cohorts that are also publicly available, and I would encourage. Actually, we are thinking about it with my colleague Sarah, whom I think you also know very well.
Yes, she was on the show.
Excellent. Yeah. So yeah, to sort of work on this, like UK Biobank cohort, for example. So yes, definitely. And I would encourage other investigators, if they're listening to us, to think about it.
Yes. So great. Yeah. There are lots of possibilities nowadays. So how soon do you think the insights from gut microbiome research could be translated into practical therapies or diagnostics for MS patients?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, like I said, there are more and more studies, but we are still at the beginning. So I think, I'm again hopeful that in the upcoming years, maybe in a decade, I would. This is a speculation, but we need, like I said, the bigger samples to confirm all these speculations that we talked about. But I am hopeful for sort of a decade in which we will get something more solid, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I think it's always good to get let's say, a realistic idea, even so it might not be enough time, 10 years, but lots of patients hope for next year or in 2 years to come. But I think that's not realistic because you have to do a lot of research.
Exactly. And, well, you can still encouraging patients again to use a Mediterranean diet. You can always do that, and there will be definitely no harm. There could be only benefit for you. But yeah, I think that it's too vague at the moment. But definitely, I think it's a very promising field. And definitely, again, coming back to the diet, using like a processed diet or like a fatty diet won't help your microbiome and won't help your MS. So this we know so far, and this you can do right now.
Yes, and it's also good for the comorbidities, right? I mean, you don't want to get cardiovascular issues if you have already MS, because these two things influence each other negatively, unfortunately. Yes. Okay, so that was lots of interesting content. Let's move on to the quickfire Q&A session. Complete the sentence. For me, multiple sclerosis is
an inspiring disease for me, thanks to my patients, who really, I think they sometimes have so many struggles in their life, but they still manage to overcome them. And it's also a fascinating field of research, as the second one. But this is the second one. Yeah.
So what development would you like to see in the field of multiple sclerosis in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so I think I'm really looking forward to, as like we mentioned, I'm very glad to be in the field because there are so many like new possibilities for the patients that we can offer. But still, I feel that, for the ones who have this primary progressive form or secondary progressive form, it's still not enough. So I would be happy to see even more. We already have some treatments, but it would be great to see something more, and that's how we can help these patients. So this would be, I think, one. And then the second one, related to MS, because I'm also sort of involved in, related disorders. So NMOSD and MOGAD is definitely sometimes underrepresented sort of topic, and in the research too. And like from my sort of home environment in Poland, even like the patients' associations patients. It's like a very small, field, and they feel like excluded, especially the ones with MOGAD. So I'm hoping that, we already, again, in NMOSD, we have, as maybe you heard, some disease-modifying interventions. But for MOGAD, it has a sort of different pathophysiology, more acute one. But it would be great to see also some interventions there. So, especially these two populations, or three populations of patients, I'm hopeful that there will be something more in the pipeline. Yes, and I'm sure that there will be, because really, I'm really, we are so fortunate that we have these possibilities, and we will have more. So
Yes,
be hopeful.
Yes, absolutely. So finally, what message of hope or encouragement would you like to share with the individuals living with MS, NMOSD, or MOGAD?
Yeah, so first of all, I think the things that we mentioned, that the field is developing very quickly. There's so many investigators and companies that want to invest in this, and so I think that don't lose hope, even at the moment, for those who have this like a more disease that is like primary progressive and it's not reacting well to the treatment that we have currently. I think that it's very possible that soon we will have more possibilities. And the other encouragement that I have is that, join forces also, like I said, with other patients. There are so many inspiring stories and so many different organizations that can help you, and you can be active. And I think that being in a group, and really I have a great experience from my other I saw that this different groups for patients, like a supportive group, and also for caregivers sometimes. And I think it could be very beneficial to hear these stories. And finally, yes, I'm hoping that patients will be involved more in the research. They will be asked questions more, what they think is really a good intervention, or what they want to be investigated. So this is a message of hope for you too, that I hope you won't feel excluded anymore. And and I think overall it's optimistic, really.
Yes, and there are lots of initiatives to include patients and to put patients really into the center of everything. So I can see that everywhere. Of course, there's still some way to walk together, but I think progress is happening. How and where can interested people follow your research activities, Natalia?
Yeah, so basically you can find my some of my studies on PubMed, obviously, but then on the website of the European Charcot Foundation, in our steering committee, I'm also there, and some updates will be published there. And also, again, because I think that we are quite active. So again, in the European Charcot Foundation, we have created with Sarah on LinkedIn, our website and different sub-communities. So we will try to publish some updates there. And of course, you can follow me also during the congresses that I will also attend with my research. And I was so happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being my guest, and thank you for bringing some spotlight into the gut microbiome.
Thank you so much, Nelly, for having me. It was really a pleasure.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed the interview and learned something new, and hopefully, yes, got a little bit inspired to go for the Mediterranean diet. By the way, next time it will be another and the final episode about the immunotherapies for multiple sclerosis, and this time it will be all on B-cell depletion, so ocrelizumab, known as Ocrevus, ofatumumab, known as Kesimpta or Bonspri, rituximab, known as Mabtera and Rituxan, and ublituximab, known as Briumvi, for active relapsing remitting MS, SPMS, and early PPMS. So I guess this might be very interesting, as these types of immunotherapies are very popular right now. And please remember, recommend the podcast to people who might be interested in it. It would be very lovely if you rate the podcast wherever you are listening to it. And then please stay as healthy and positive as possible. And see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening today. I hope you found it helpful. You may also be interested in the previously published episodes and posts, which you can find at ms-perspektive.com/podcast. Perspective with a K. You can also get a free PDF with 11 tips for your positive impact on MS at ms-perspektive.com/newsletter. If you'd like to get in touch, you can reach me at nele@ms-perspektive.com or on social media. Hear you next time.